The war in Iran, escalating with U.S. and Israeli airstrikes in June 2025, threatens to cripple Russia's standing as a global power. President Donald Trump's aggressive stance, demanding Iran's unconditional surrender and authorizing U.S.B-2 stealth bombers to strike nuclear facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, has placed Russia in an unprecedentedly vulnerable position. Moscow's economy, military, geopolitics, and even demographics face existential risks as its alliance with Iran unravels. Compounding this, China's calculated neutrality and the Taiwan Strait showdown on April 23, 2025, where Chinese J-16 fighters harassed the USS William P. Lawrence, exposed Russia's diminishing influence in a world distracted by multiple crises. Let's unpack the critical ways this conflict dismantles Russia's war machine and global aspirations. Since Ukraine repelled Russia's 2022 invasion of Kiev, the war has become a grinding battle of attrition. Russia's strategy of hurling conscripts and outdated equipment into the fray faltered, exposing its inadequate drone capabilities. Iran filled this gap, becoming Russia's key supplier of ShahedDrones, critical for its terror campaign against Ukrainian cities and infrastructure. Between September 2022 and September 2024, Russia launched over 8,000 ShahedDrones, primarily the Shahed-136, at Ukrainian targets. These flying mopeds, costing $20,000 to $50,000 each, are a cost-effective nightmare. Built from foam, paper, and plywood, the 11-foot-long drone with an 8-foot wingspan carries a 110-pound warhead. Its cough drop size sensor and credit card-sized GPS unit enable long-range strikes, powered by a 50-horsepower motor. These drones aren't precise but overwhelm Ukraine's expensive NATO-supplied interceptors, costing 10 to 20 times more per missile, bleeding Kiev's defenses dry. Recognizing their value, Russia established a drone factory in Yelabuga, Tatarstan, by June 2023, rebranding Shahed-130 as Garin-2 for mass production with Iranian assistance. By late 2024, Russia reportedly produced over 10,000 drones, triple Iran's initial supply. But this domestic effort faces severe bottlenecks. Iranian engineers provide critical expertise in navigation, warhead assembly, and quality control, which Russia struggles to replicate. Reverse engineering efforts faltered due to reliance on foreign electronics, GPS systems, and flight software requiring constant updates. Garin-2 drones suffer an 82% failure rate in recent attacks, often diverted by Ukrainian countermeasures into fields. The Yelabuga facility also grapples with labor shortages, relying on undertrained students and foreign workers lacking specialized skills. The Iran-Israel war, intensified by U.S. strikes on June 21, 2025, disrupts the supply chain. Israeli F-35s and USB-2s target Iran's drone factories, forcing Tehran to prioritize domestic defense over exports. Iran's drone exports to Russia, previously fetching $104 million per batch, funded its weapons programs. With exports halted, Russia loses both drones and Iranian expertise, while Tehran loses a financial lifeline. Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb in June 2025, smuggling drones 2,200 miles to hit Russian strategic bombers, proves Kiev can target Yelabuga, further threatening Russia's drone production. Iran, unable to sustain exports amid its own war, leaves Russia's Garin-2s vulnerable to Ukraine's evolving defenses. Russia's war economy, with 6.3% of GDP devoted to defense in 2025, hinges on oil and gas exports, which account for 35 to 40% of budget revenues. The Iran war spikes oil prices, with Brent crude jumping from $69.36 to $75 per barrel in June 2025, potentially hitting $100 if Iran disrupts the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil and LNG flows. This could temporarily boost Russia's coffers, but the benefits are fleeting. Russia's reliance on a shadow fleet, 350 to 600 aging tankers evading sanctions to transport oil, becomes a liability. These unseaworthy vessels, operating illegally with minimal oversight, carry nearly a fifth of global maritime crude. The Iran war increases naval scrutiny in the Persian Gulf, where U.S. and European forces hunt for Iranian military shipments. EU sanctions, intensified by the 17th package in May 2025, banned shadow fleet vessels from ports, while Denmark, Sweden, and the UK inspect insurance certificates along key routes. War conditions make these ships sitting ducks, lacking naval protection or legal docking rights. They face satellite surveillance and interdiction. A single seizure could collapse 75% of Russia's maritime oil exports, gutting its war funding. The Russian Finance Ministry already slashed 2025 oil and gas revenue forecast from 10.94 trillion rubles, $139 billion, to 8.32 trillion rubles, $101.47 billion, or 3.7% of GDP, due to falling prices and demand. If Iran's actions push global buyers toward stable suppliers like Canada, Brazil, or Norway, Russia's discounted oil, sold to China at 30 to 40% below market rates, loses its edge. China's leverage, demanding domestic rates for power of Siberia, to gas, further erodes Russia's economic sovereignty. Putin's geopolitical strategy relies on the BRICS bloc: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and UAE, to challenge Western dominance. Russia positions itself as BRICS' ideological leader, using Iran's partnership to project power in the Middle East. The Iran war dismantles this. China's neutrality, condemning Israeli strikes while avoiding confrontation, positions Beijing as BRICS' true leader. China's $82 billion in Russian fossil fuel purchases in 2024, compared to India's $50 billion, underscores Moscow's dependence. Beijing stalls power of Siberia. Two talks, demanding steep discounts, knowing Russia has no alternatives. The Taiwan Strait incident on April 23, 2025, where Chinese J-16s buzz the USS William P. Lawrence, highlights China's assertive strategy, exploiting global distractions like Iran's war and Russia's Ukraine quagmire. Russia's muted response to Iran's crisis, no military support despite a January 2025 strategic partnership, reveals its overstretched military and fear of U.S. confrontation under Trump. Putin's offer to mediate in Iran, rejected by Trump, underscores Russia's waning influence. The fall of Syria's Assad regime, another Russian ally, further isolates Moscow, mirroring Iran's potential collapse. Russia's military, drained by 1 million casualties in Ukraine by June 2025, relies heavily on drones. Iran's Shahed-130 and technical support enabled Russia's nightly barges, with nearly 500 drones launched per attack. Without Iranian supplies, Russia's Garand-2s, plagued by high failure rates and labor shortages, can't sustain this tempo. Ukraine's drone innovations like Operation Spiderweb threaten Russia's production facilities, while Kiev's HIMARS strikes, such as the July 2, 2025, attack killing Major General Mikhail Gudkov, expose Russia's vulnerabilities. The Iran war diverts U.S. and Israeli focus, but Trump's strikes on Iran's nuclear sites signal a willingness to confront authoritarian regimes, potentially emboldening NATO against Russia. Russia's demographic crisis worsens as the war in Ukraine grinds on. The UK MOD reported 20,538 Russian soldiers faced AWOL or desertion charges by June 30, 2025, driven by brutal hazing and inadequate training. Conscripts facing death or prison increasingly defect, with some like Vladimir choosing jail over combat. The Iran war amplifies this despair. Russia's inability to aid Iran, coupled with losses in Syria, shatters the image of Putin as a strongman. European resolve, hardened by Iran's aggression and Ukraine's resistance, shifts toward decisive action. France and the UK, nuclear powers, push for military deployments, abandoning cautious aid debates. Europe's energy independence, with Russian gas imports dropping from 40% in 2021 to 11% in 2024, and plans to phase out Russian gas by 2027, undermines Putin's blackmail tactics. Germany's potential reopening of nuclear reactors and investments in renewables further erode Russia's leverage. The Iran war, by threatening Middle Eastern oil, accelerates Europe's shift to stable suppliers like Qatar, Canada, and Norway, leaving Russia isolated. The Iran-Israel war, far from distracting the West, galvanizes it. Trump's Operation Midnight Hammer, deploying 14 bunker-buster bombs on Iran's nuclear sites, signals a shift from restraint to decisive action. Europe, inspired by Ukraine's precision and Iran's aggression, reevaluates its Ukraine strategy. The EU's 17 sanctions package in May 2025 tightens the noose on Russia's resources, while right-wing shifts in European politics favor military solutions over refugee aid. Syria's collapse, driven by rebellion and economic pressure, not European humanitarian programs, sets a precedent. Putin's nightmare is a Europe free of Russian energy, economically resilient, and politically unified against authoritarianism. The Taiwan Strait showdown, where China exploited global distractions, underscores the need for Western vigilance. Russia, stripped of Iranian drones, Middle Eastern allies, and oil markets, faces economic collapse and military irrelevance. Its BRICS leadership crumbles to China, and its war in Ukraine becomes unsustainable. Putin, once a global power broker, risks presiding over an isolated, broken state. For more on how the Iran war reshapes global power, subscribe to Armies of the Past and explore our predictions on this unfolding crisis.